Connecting. Hi, everyone. I'm Alice Kuder with Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate, and with me is,
I'm Evie Knoke, Senior Loan Officer with Guild Mortgage.
and we have combined our resources to do this recording. We call it Real Estate Roller Coaster. Our intention is to keep you up to date on the real estate happenings in the Seattle area, both from the lender's perspective and the agent, buyers, and sellers perspective. And right now it is September of 2020. With all that that entails. And this episode is going to be about what you can expect when you first meet or get together with a lender and an agent, and not at the same time, obviously. But so I am going to go ahead and start, and then we'll go back and forth between Evie and I. Um, the first thing I typically do when I meet with a new client is I ask them to fill out a wish list. Meaning, no, I'm talking about buyers right now, obviously. What is it that they are looking for in a house? How many bedrooms? How many of this? How many of that? And I warn them that at the beginning, what you think you want and what you can afford might not mesh. And as we continue looking for homes, going out and previewing, then what you thought you wanted might change along the way. Most of us, that happens too. So that's kind of the very first thing I do. Evie, what's the first thing you do when you meet with a new client?
Well, I also talk to them about not so much their wish list, but really I am wanting to know, when they're looking at homes online, because we all do, what sort of homes, what's the price point that they're gravitating towards, and I really then also ask them what payment have they thought about what their max payment is, or what's a comfortable mortgage payment for them. I like to do those two things to see that when I start to work the numbers later, if that actually kind of makes sense. If sometimes people have a payment and they've been looking on a certain price range, which is higher, and yet they're putting a smaller amount down, and sometimes those online sites like Redfin and Zillow are always showing the payments for 20% down. And if they're putting less down and there's mortgage insurance, then that tends to sort of, make the payment higher. And then I'm also really just sort of pre-qualifying them a little bit on the phone. It's usually like, or if we meet on Zoom or however they want to do that, or in person someday again. So we will, I'm really seeing what is their credit score. Well, how much are they putting down? How long have they been in their job? So I'm really going through if I see any potential red flags. And then after that conversation is when I can advise them whether or not we can move on or not. If they say their credit score is 500, then I'm going to say, well, we need to, work on it and maybe provide them some solutions to do that. Then I'd send them to my website to apply, or take the application over the phone, that kind of thing. And then, but that's really the first meeting, is sort of me sort of pre-qualifying them, seeing where they're at, and seeing, if it makes sense what their payment is compared to the home that they want to purchase. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why one of the first things buyers need to do is get pre-approved, with a lender, because it doesn't make sense, and it's not a good use of your time to go out and look for homes if we don't know what you really qualify for.
Yeah.
And in this fast-paced market, especially in Seattle's fast-paced market, when we are ready to write an offer, you're going to need a pre-approval letter. There's not a seller out there right now who is going to accept an offer that doesn't have proof that you can actually come up to the bat or to the base and hit that one out of the ballpark, because there's a lot of competition out there, whether it's for cash or for financing.
Correct. Yeah. So, and that I would like to talk about that real quick there, the difference between a pre-qualification letter versus a pre-approval letter. Pre-qualification letter means that somebody's applied online, and we've actually have imported their application into our system. We've checked credit, and then we run it through an automated underwriting system, and we can see that based on how they applied with their income, down payment, all of that, we have an approval. But a pre-approval letter means that we're actually now verifying what they applied with. We're verifying the income. We're getting verifications of employment. from employers seeing like, can we use the overtime income that they applied with? Are they still getting it? All of those things. We're checking for W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns if needed, and then looking at their checking savings or other asset accounts to see if that actually, if they have that money to close. So that's why it's so much more valuable to a seller and a listing agent is looking for that, because a pre-qualification letter, it's garbage in, garbage out. If there's a mistake on that, then it's not valid. But a pre-approval letter means that we've looked at everything.
Exactly. Okay. I'm going to do, as I said, a wish list is kind of the first thing I use, a tool when I'm sitting down with new buyers. But then I also like to have a conversation about expectations, because the roles of agents over time have really changed. Back in the day before the internet, which is a long time ago now, but it used to be that what the agent's main job was to go out and find a home for their buyers, because you couldn't search for those online. So there was a lot of information that agents kind of kept to themselves, and that was kind of how they proved their worth. Nowadays, almost everyone, I think the percentage is something like 93% of home buyers look online on their own first. So the role of the agent is not so much to help you find the home as much as to help you qualify them, help you write offers that will be accepted, to know all of the legalities, because that's the problem. That's a big thing. There's a lot of laws and there's a lot of rules and procedures involved in real estate sales. And you need to be able to be sure that your agent is up on all of that information, and so that you don't get in trouble. Losing earnest money is something that buyers are always afraid of, and that's one way that you assure that doesn't happen is when your agent is on top of all of the rules and the laws and the forms. So that's a big expectation right now, that I think is different from in the past. But I also talk with my buyers about my expectations of them, because I want to know, are you ready to go now? We're not going out if you're saying, I might want to find something in 6 months. That's not a good use of your time or mine. So we talk about expectations of, okay, you're going to be actively looking. I'm going to send you some things on an auto search. When you see something that really fits, then you call me. And there is still some information in the listings that only agents are privy to. And I will look at that and tell you if there's any red flags or anything, whether they're waiting to look at offers or looking right ahead immediately. So that whole expectation thing, and I want to know what you expect of me, and I want to know you to know what I expect of you.
Yeah, I wanted to just make a comment too about what you said, because I think that there are many people that feel like, real estate agents just can show the house, can have the keys to get in, and then are not, it's pretty, anyone can do it, and you just have to stick a sign in the yard to even sell a house. And that is so far from the truth. What you get with a realtor is that experience of that they've written offers, or they have reviewed offers or presented offers over and over and over and over again. And there are things that they can advise on, and what to expect from the seller. How would you kind of, structure your offer to get more, maybe asking for things after the inspection and those kind of things. And just that they have their thumbs on the pulse of what's going on in the market. And that is super valuable information. And if you're navigating that alone, it's, you might think it's easy, but you're going to get burned. Yeah.
And what should your clients expect of you as a lender?
Well, I think it's very important that we're pre-approving them correctly and providing accurate information, because I don't want to send someone out there with a pre-approval letter and then have something that we missed, later on, and all of a sudden now towards the end, after they've fallen in love with the house, they've made the offer and it's been accepted, now there's an issue, right? So really talk a lot about expectations with that, and how we'd like to get some files that are tricky, definitely want to get them into underwriting to make sure an underwriter is the one that really is is the one that signs off on the loan, and they're the final approval, right? So like I could be the assistant nurse and my processor is the nurse, and then the underwriter's like the doctor in terms of like this, it's their word. They're going to put their stamp on it. And so that also, that underwriting letter is really powerful when they're out there with making an offer, because that means that we're not going to have any of those things whether they've been pre-approved or underwritten, approved, correctly. And the seller doesn't have to worry about their financing falling through because something got missed. We are also right now really checking, because of COVID, that people are continuing to make the same, income, that what is their chances that they might be furloughed, those kind of things as well. They're pretty important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think availability should be important to a client, both yours and mine. There are lenders out there who are still kind of Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, which does not work well in our fast-paced market.
Right.
Usually when we need a pre-approval letter, it's either on the fly or on the weekend or in the evenings. And so I don't think it's fair to expect either agents or lenders to be available 24/7, but we should be available at the times when you need us. And a lot of times that is weekends and evenings.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's what we do. That's what I do. And that's what I tell people. It's like, look, this is all going to happen when you're off of work. And please don't, feel free to, contact me, text me, email me, with whatever information that you're needing to, if you need to know what the rates are and what the payment is for that house, that's what I want to provide to you before you actually make an offer, so you feel comfortable with that payment. And that's usually really our role, is making sure that, if there's, or now you have to offer more, okay, what does that payment look like, and sending another pre-approval letter. So it's super important, and it's just part of the job, and you have to be available. And a lot of times with the online lenders, that you're not going to find that. You're not going to be able to reach anyone until 8 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of combined with that is the discussion about how you want to be communicated with, whether you prefer email or phone or text, and what those numbers are. For myself, I think so many people now, we really do prefer text, but there are times when the information we're talking about needs to be documented. And that's when I try to put things into emails so that we can go back to them and look at them more easily. But we'll talk about, what are the hours? Is it okay to call you or me at midnight? No, it's not. But, what hours are okay and what's the best number to reach you? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say in terms of the role for agents is there's something that's called dual agency. In this state, and not in every state, but in this state, it's still legal for an agent to represent both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. So for instance, if I had a listing and I also was working with a buyer who was interested in that listing, if everyone agreed, I could be the agent on both ends of that. And that's called being a dual agent. Personally, I do not find that practical, if anything else, because I feel like my job is to represent my client to the best of my ability. And I can't represent two clients to the best. I could do two of them equal, but I don't want to do that. That's not my job. I can't do as good a job for either one of them. So you should kind of think about, is that something you would want? And if not, you need to let your agent know that dual agency would not be acceptable in your opinion and in your case.
Right.
All right, let's see. We talked about communication, availability, expectations. What's the next step for you, Evie? Once they've kind of filled out paperwork, where does that go with you? I mean, they filled out an application?
Yes. They fill out an application, and then we work on it. That's sort of the pre-qual letter. We send them a list of documentation that we're going to need from them. Because I would say that the application is the first step, because nowadays with the technology, there's so many things that we can get immediately online in terms of, especially if they work for a bigger organization like Amazon and Microsoft, they have a third-party vendor that we can actually, with their permission when they fill out the application, that we can get their 3-year work history so we know what their base income is and their pay stub and their pay range and that kind of thing. So it can sometimes limit what we need. But once we look at that, then we're we're sending out a kind of a needs list. We get that back, then we're finishing up the pre-approval letter. We send that, and then we have another consultation we talk about the estimates, about the process, about where they're at. What I want to make sure is that we're meeting their goals, and that they're also understanding where they're at and their limitations, and if they can go higher if they want. Sometimes people feel like really comfortable, and yet we can improve them a little bit higher. So I let them know they have some wiggle room in case they need to offer more in this competitive market, things like that. But definitely following up with we're doing Zoom a lot. I love it because I can share my screen. I can go over the estimates with them. I can talk about how rates change every day and kind of show them sort of the history of that. And yeah, just really educate them on the process, depending on whether, even if they're repeat buyers, how quickly we go through is going to be a little bit different, but a reminder about everything and like going through the estimates and what are all the costs, because that helps explain who are all the players involved. Escrow, title, what do they do? Appraiser, the county, for recording costs and things like that. So yeah, just educating, being accurate, educating, and setting expectations.
Yeah, I'll often get questions about how long does this whole thing take? And of course, the most unpredictable is how long it takes you to find a house that you want to make an offer on. And in this, again, fast-paced market, I'll keep repeating that, a lot of times there are multiple offers on properties that have just come on the market. One of the strategies that I like to encourage with my buyers is to not necessarily be looking, at least not in the beginning, at the brand new properties coming on the market, because those are the ones that everyone's paying attention to, and they're going to rush out and make offers, and that means you're competing with multiple offers, and probably you're going to overpay. And if you want to avoid that, they're called bidding wars, and most people will say, I don't want to get in a bidding war, but apparently not everyone, because they're out there, they're happening. But one of the strategies that I encourage people to use, or buyers, is to look at homes that have been on the market for a while and maybe even went off and came back on, because most people will assume that if it went off the market and came back on, it failed inspection. So it's a crummy house. There's something wrong with it. I don't want to look at it. Whereas the reality is, most of the time, it's a financing question or a cold feet question that made it go off and come back on.
Right.
So if you can look at those and go back in after they've gotten rid of all of this nonsense about a review date, then you have a very good possibility of being the one and only offer and getting it just for list price, maybe even a little bit less. So that's a strategy that I really encourage.
I think that's a great strategy. It's really, that makes total sense. And I see that a lot. There's really nothing, wrong with the house. And it was just the financing fell through because somebody didn't get pre-approved properly.
Yeah. And there's also, the other thing about homes that have been on the market for a while, even if they haven't gone off and come back on, there might be one little quirk about the house that a majority of people wouldn't like, but it might not bother you at all, whether it's that it's near a train track or near a busy street or too far from the grocery store, something like that. And so if you can find out what the quirk is that other people don't like and see if it's something that doesn't bother you or does bother you, that's another reason why that strategy can work pretty well.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, do you want to add anything there?
Nope, I think that's good. Yeah, everybody wants the perfect house, but also, if you can find something that's dated, maybe, and that you have the ability you're like, okay, well, we can get this house that's in the neighborhood that we want, and we can then fix these things up over time. Probably going to be less competition on that house than something that's perfect, because everybody wants that perfect house that's turnkey that they don't have to do anything for or do anything to fix up.
Yeah, so if you are willing to do some things that can give you an advantage there too. So again, that's, the hardest part to predict is how long it'll take to find the home. But once you found it and made an offer on it, and gotten what we call mutual acceptance, meaning you've offered this, they've said yes or no, and you've gone back and forth and come up to a place where you both agree, then it's still usually about 30 days. Although lenders right now are so busy, I'll let you talk to this more, Evie, but because of all the refis happening as well, 30 to 45 days is still average. Is that what you would say too? That's what I'm finding.
Yeah, it really depends on the lender, the organization, but trying to get like even if we've already had them in underwriting and trying to, we used to be able to say, well, we can close in 2 weeks because it's already been underwriting, but it's just not happening. And a lot of that's too soon because we have to order the appraisal. And also it's just, it has to go back in the underwriting, and there's other things that have to, the processes that have to happen and forms that need to be filled out. And then getting the loan documents out because the funders are so busy. So that's another bottleneck, is the funding is so busy. So that's super tight and stressful. Maybe 3 weeks if we've already been in underwriting, but if we can get 4 weeks, 5 weeks to close a loan, that would be great. But it's still so competitive that sometimes we don't get those bad.
Yeah.
But 30 days for sure, if it's a pre-approval and it has not been through underwriting already.
Yeah. So again, in my first meeting with people after we've had those kinds of conversations, then we'll actually go online in the MLS and start looking for properties that they may have already seen, but that now we're looking at them together with kind of an eye for me learning what they want and what's important to them. And that I learn a lot too when we go out for some showings. Now, yes, we're in COVID and showings, you don't get to do open houses anymore. So that kind of limits buyers' abilities to look at homes. But I really like going to a few and listening to what's appealing to them and what's not, and that helps me narrow things down. So we'll look at some of those online, kind of come up with a plan of here, let's go look at these either sometimes that afternoon, the next day, whatever. And then I just like to go through next steps, see, here's what you can expect from this point on, and how likely to go, and all the way through to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Evie, that it really is important for buyers to get you the documentation you ask for in a timely way rather than not put it off.
Yeah, so, speaking of trying to close on time, I mean, that all really depends. If we can move much faster if we're working with buyers who are super engaged and willing to, make sure that they're checking their emails or their personal email, whatever email that they gave us during the days, and that's where sometimes I say, do you need me to text you when we send you something? Yes, I do. Okay, great. We'll do that. And, getting it back as soon as possible. I mean, because every day can count, right? So we have to get that back. We have to kind of look at it. Then we have to send it to the processor. Then she might not even get it to it that day because she or he have, 60 files that they're doing. And so, it might be a couple other days. So we don't want to, every day counts. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's kind of a wrap up for me as to what you can expect in your early meetings with a broker. I do always tell people, I think it's important to choose someone whose personality fits yours well, whose work style fits yours well, because it can become a very intimate relationship where, and if those things match, then the stress level comes way down. And I imagine that's probably true with lenders as well. You certainly want to make sure you choose one that you trust completely and you believe is going to steer you to the correct loan.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that the trust is trust your instincts. If you're not feeling comfortable with that lender, if you feel like things are not being communicated all the way and information's being missed, that's just maybe not the right lender for you. Find another lender because it's important. It's a big purchase.
Exactly.
An important purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for watching. I hope this has been helpful. You can see our contact information on the screens above us, and we'd both be thrilled to talk to you about how we might be able to help.
All right.
Until next time, thank you and goodbye.